For the first part of this video, we'll be looking at animating a simple part before moving on to our digger arm. Now for this, you're going to need the A2plus workbench, and we're actually running on FreeCAD version 0.18, and I'm running under Ubuntu. Now to actually install this A2plus workbench, we'll go over to Tools, Add-on Manager, and you can see here we've got a number of workbenches. The A2plus workbench is actually in here, already installed. Now the A2plus workbench comes after Assembler 2, but before Assembler 4. You can't use Assembler 4 with FreeCAD 0.18 because it will crash. Assembler 2 is no longer supported, and that's for older versions of FreeCAD. 0.19 is still under development at the moment, but can still be installed via their website. So I've started a new document here, and what we're going to do is, first of all, we're going to create a small part to allow us to build our skeleton. So jump into the part design, and I'm going to go create a new body, and I'm going to create a sketch on that body. I'm going to make a really simple part on the XY plane, and all this part is going to be is basically a link, and then we'll go into something a bit more complex later. So this will just give you the starters of actually doing this. So I'm going to restrict it to the center point. Just use my page up and page down to find the center point there. I've got those two, and I'm going to restrict that point constraint there using the constraint. And now I'm going to actually restrict the height of this, and I'm going to have that as 4 millimeters, and I'm just going to zoom out, going to restrict the length. And we're going to use the fix the length of a line and distance. There we go. So I'm going to do that as 100 millimeters. So we can see that's fully constrained now. In fact, I'm going to make this a bit smaller. I'm going to go 50 millimeters on here, so it stays on screen. There we go. Let's just do a full screen on this so we can actually see what we're doing. So I'm going to close that sketch now. So I've gone back into the part design, and I can pad that to 10 mil. We can OK that. Now what I should have done is actually put some holes in here, but I can actually alter that sketch. So I'm going to just jump back into the sketch by clicking on model. I'll click on the sketch, and I'm going to put some circles that I'm going to use as holes in here that we're going to actually constrain to. So I'm going to place a circle here, hit escape, and put constraint on the actual diameter of this circle. Two millimeter diameter, and at the moment we can still move it about, so I'm going to constrain it to the center point there. It's all gone green, so it's fully constrained. I'm going to move over to the other end, but first of all I'm going to click it and Control C, so I copy it, see this line, so I can use my arrow keys now to move over to here. Just place it next to it. It's pulled the other constraints in with it, which just at the moment is a diameter constraint. I'll constrain that to the point there. So that's all constrained now. Close that, and our pad has now taken on that constraint. The pad's a bit too thick, so I'm going to bring that down to 2 mil. That will do. So that's the linkage we're going to use just to show the skeleton and how it all connects together. I'm going to save that part, and I'm going to call it link 50mm. So call it link 50mm, saved it. So that's saved. Got this Python console down here which I don't really want, so I can get rid of that. So that's what we're going to be using for each of the arms. So we're going to create a scene first. So I'm going to create a new scene and I'm going to jump into the A2plus version 0.4 workbench. I'm going to import that body into here, which we've just designed. So this second icon over is add a single shape out of external geometry file. We can also get it to the A2plus, add a single shape out of external file, not the add apart from external file. And it will say that we have to save the scene first. So let's do that. I'm just going to save it as an old file that I've got in there, A2 demo. Yes. Okay, so let's import our part. So add a single shape out of external file. And I'm going to go to the link 50mm that we added earlier. Open that up. And what will happen, it will say select a shape to be imported. And I'm going to choose the body. There's nothing else to actually choose in there. Let's choose that. Now at the moment, that's been dumped into our 3D space, and that is as a fixed position. So if I look at my data, imported part, fixed position there. So that stays static. We can actually change that if we want. So we can actually fix the position to false if we so desire. But for the time being, leave that to true, fixed position. I'm going to rename that link A. You see the reason why, because otherwise the default naming gets a bit confusing otherwise. I'm going to import another part now. I'm going to import the same part, open that up, and it's using the body. We choose that, and I haven't actually clicked my mouse at the moment, but we can actually move that about wherever we want. I'm going to move it to about here, because you'll see how these snap together in a second. And I'm going to call that link B. So I'm going to rename that. So we've got two parts in there, and I want to actually link these together so they actually pivot around these points, these circles here. Now the way you can do that, there's multiple ways of doing that, but I'm going to use a circular constraint to do that. So let's give us a bit more space. So we can see what we're doing. I'm going to just zoom into here using my page up and page down. So we've got two in here, so if I select those, we can actually see B's at the top, A's at the bottom. And I want to connect this circle. So I've just clicked on that circle and using my Alt to actually move the actual window about. I haven't actually clicked on the actual scene itself, I just clicked on the circle, so that's still highlighted. Hold down Control and select the other circle. So I've taken my finger off Control now and using the Alt so you can see the circles I've selected, and you can see these two are highlighted here. Now along our toolbar you can actually see we've got these two circles. If I hover over them, you can see it says add a circular edge constraint between two parts. And you've got a bit of a hint there of what it actually does. The reason why I've selected those two is I want to show you something that might happen that might confuse you. So if I select these two icons here, or A2plus, constraint, and add a circular constraint there, circular edge constraint, you see that I can, because this dialog is open, I can still use my Alt, but it looks like they've disappeared. But our constraint's been made here, but if we click on A, link A, you can see that if we move this, it's flashing and there's some green showing through, and that's because it's actually inside this object. And we can solve that by clicking flip direction, and we've just flipped that around. Or if we hit flip direction again, it gives us another option, so we can actually keep on hitting flip direction and decide what we want from there. So I'm going to go for that, so it's actually partly inside. I'm going to set that. Now we've constrained those two pivot points. But if we click on the move the part under a raw constraint, you'll notice that if we try to move this one, it cannot be moved because the position's fixed. That's because of our made it static down here. So on this one, if we look at the data, fixed position is true, so this one will stay fixed. So this one should be able to move. So if we move this, you can see it's not moving. That's because we need another part in here to actually allow us to move it in the train. This can be moved by using the placement and the angle. So if we change the angle of this, what will happen is that will actually start to move. That's absolutely fine. So we use our up and down keys there to move the angle. So that's actually pivoting on that point, which is absolutely perfect. That's exactly what we want. If these points separate, there's a Rubik's Cube over here to solve the constraints, so we can actually click on that and that will solve them. But let's have a look what's happened over here. So we've got link A and link B, and there's a constraint that's been made here. So circle edge 001 on link B. Now, if we open up link B, we can actually see another constraint in here. So that's showing that's linked A to B. So in B we've got link A there, and we've got this constraint that's sitting outside of link A, which is a bit interesting because I would have thought that would have been inside there, but that's okay. And if we click on the constraint, we can actually get some more information up in the data. So let's pull this window out a bit. So click on the link B constraint, and if we look down here, we can actually see the sub-elements that is actually linked. So we've got the object that it's linked it to, which is B underscore link 50mm 001, and the other one here, object 2. So those are the internal names that it's given it when it actually create those objects, but we can actually see the actual edge that it's linked to, which is edge 18. So we're looking on our edge constraint for link B, which is this one here. So we just get rid of link A by hiding it for a second. Click on this one, so we're looking at edge 18. So if we hover over there, we can see, click on it, there's a page in there, so that circle there. If we look down here, hover over, you can actually see that says edge 18, and you can see the actual internal name that's given it. Okay, so that's actually create a constraint in there. Let's bring our A back and add another linkage in here. So I'm going to click on the actual add a single shape out of external file and click on the link 50mm again. Open it up, choose the body, and we can just place it anywhere. I'm going to place it over here for the time being. I'm going to rename that to link C. Rename link C, and we're going to do the same. So I'm going to move up to this one. I'm going to click the circle there, and I'm going to click the circle on this one, hitting Control first, so you can see those two have highlighted in here. So we're going to link those together, and using the circular edge constraint, we'll place them in constraint with each other. And I'm quite happy that's been placed in the correct constraint. I can move this about while this box is still open. We can flip this if we so desire. That'll do, accept that. Zoom out. Now we have this on screen with our free links. What I'm going to do is just going to position it. I'm going to click on the move the part under rule, and what you'll see if I click the top one now, so I single click the top one, we can actually move this about. So that's all moving nicely about there. So you can see that if this was something like a digger arm, we can actually constrain the different objects of the digger arm to these points and allow for movement. Obviously the top one we'll need to actually change the placement and the angle to allow the movement. We can also do it with the other parts, so we can change the angle of this one, so we've got placement and angle, but you'll see that it looks like it's broken after changing that angle. Just hit the Rubik's Cube and that will just resolve that. And we need to actually allow for that in our Python code if we do any coding, if we want to animate this. But the trouble is, if you see my other videos, you can actually see which commands are actually seen down here when you actually start rotating these by clicking on the angle here. Click rotate on here, you can see that's rotating, and we can see that down the bottom we can actually see commands coming in here, but you can see there, but if we click the solve, no command has come up here, and there is a command that you actually use for this. We have to actually import a library to do this and allow for the solver to actually solve this. It's called app solver, and we'll go into that when we do our Python. The good thing about the A2plus workbench is that we can actually edit parts while they're actually in our tree. If I click on any of these parts, because these are all the same, I can actually edit one and the effects will be applied to all of them. So let's edit one of these parts here. How can you actually use the stairs with a edit icon here, edit imported part, or can actually select the A2plus option from the drop down menu at the top here. The good thing about the A2plus workbench is that I can actually select the part and actually edit that part's file straight from here and have it update all the actual separate parts that are made from that file. So because this scene is made up of 3 of the same parts, if I edit one, the effect will actually be applied to all of them. So I can do that by clicking on the part, clicking on the edit icon here, edit an imported part, or from the A2plus drop down menu at the top here, I can edit an imported part here. That will drop me into the actual part. I can swap between the workbenches, say to the part design. I can select my face, I can create a sketch on my face, and here I can actually add geometry to my face and pad and pocket as I so desire. So for instance, I'm going to place a piece of geometry along here, just manipulate that part. Just going to do it quickly. I'm not going to worry about any constraints at all. Just want it as a demonstration. So that's sufficient for me. I'm going to close, and I'm going to pocket that part all the way through. Okay, that. I'm going to save that. Control S to save. I can close that scene because it's actually opened it in a new file down the bottom here. You can see that it hasn't taken effect. But if I jump back over to my A2plus workbench and click the update parts which have been imported to the assembly, or use the A2plus and update parts imported assembly option here, you can see now that's been updated, but you can see stuff has been broken in there. So let's just hit resolve. You can see we've got a bit of a problem. Sometimes this actually happens, sometimes linkages will break in there. So I'm going to click on this one here, which is link C. Come in here, I'm going to delete my constraint. Just going to have a look at the others, so those will okay. And I'm just going to constrain one of these circles again. And I'm going to constrain it to this one here, holding down Control, clicking. Those two have now been highlighted, and we reconstrain that. Let's move this out of the way a bit, and just change the direction and accept that. So that's been reconstrained now, and I should be able to move this. There we go. So that's back in context. So just watch out for that. Sometimes the linkage can break, but that's how to actually edit those in situ. We're going to leave it there for the time being. In the next video, we're going to actually look at a viewer that's actually created a model that's passed on to me to actually help him to actually animate it. And we'll look at actually getting that into the A2 workbench and actually doing the same as what I've done with the links. The Python will come in another video because I'm going to go about it a different way and actually create a small interface that allows you to control the angles of the different links. So we'll have a small window to come up on screen with the buttons in there. So we'll actually create a widget rather than a macro, and though it will be controlled from the macro. Okay, and I'll see you in the next video. If you like what you're seeing, please subscribe to my site, and also I have a Ko-Fi site where you can actually donate a few pence or a few pounds, dollars, or whatever your currency is, and that's at ko-fi.com/mang0, and there you'll be able to help me fund my site, and all the money that I actually get from any funds will actually get pushed back into the channel. Thanks a lot for watching and subscribing. I'll see you next time.